Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do this would be number 4 in the Small League Sink Ships week. Video number 4. Now to talk about the one that really got me into the band, although oddly enough, this album from 2015, Face Yourself and Remove Your Sandals, which they have a good habit of doing that, of creating these albums, their earlier stuff, with long titles. They are post-rock, and post-rock, that's an element of a lot of post-rock. You know, Murder by Death is one. Godspeed, I think, has done that. But anyway, this album came out, it was like February of 2015. My review video is still up, of course. It was one of the first 50 videos I made on YouTube. It was like less than a year after I started doing videos on this channel. But, and I loved it. I mean, I was pretty much won over almost after like the first or second time I listened to it. And I listen to it pretty regularly because I've stated many times this album is the most recent album that I've considered a perfect 5 stars. Even though there's been a lot of albums in the last 7 years and change, almost 8 years since it came out. Actually, it's over 8 years. But since then, so you can say over 8 years it's come out. There's something about the way I look at with an album that's a perfect 5 stars. And at that point, I wasn't, I was finding 5-star albums in the 2000s a lot. I talked about this a few months ago. But in the 2010s, it was just so little, and it's been even less since. Maybe my standards have gone up. I don't know. I don't know exactly. But the biggest reason why I consider it 5 stars still is that it just works so well from beginning to end as a complete album. The atmosphere and the cinematic element to it. And there's a lot of other things I love about it, but that's the way I think I see it and I hear it and I perceive it as a whole. It is kind of in some ways greater than some of its parts, but I could say that about a lot of records that aren't 5 stars. There's such a charm to it. Maybe I feel like it's a personal thing, like considering that no one ever seems to catch on. I can sort of, it's a little bit like Blood Moon. It's like no one ever really fully caught on to Blood Moon from Apes to Androids, and this is kind of the same case. And even among, again, the Small League Sink Ships fan base, it's not an absolute favorite. I think people like it, but the band don't even reference it that much. I also think this is maybe their most progressive rock-like album, at least up to this point, and maybe still up among everything they've put out so far, including the new record, which, the jury's still out about that to an extent. But it's also very post-rock. I mean, the songs are longer. You have the closing track and Building Blocks, which are 2 of my probably 3 or 4 favorites on here. Closing track, The Mind Is Its Own Place, are both 9 minutes and change. Building Blocks still remains the standout track. That Building Blocks is probably one of the 10 best tracks of the 2010s. That song, that composition, especially you get to midway through it, I just get chills and goosebumps the way that it goes back and forth with the drum work and just the little piano refrains, and it's so atmospheric, and it's very like fairy tale, like it's like a kid fairy tale music, almost like a Disney thing at points. There's a bunch of like Disney kind of moments on here that are like not cheesy or corny, melodramatic, but they just kind of have a childlike sort of innocence to them. The other thing that's about this record is that the inspiration and influence on a lot of their music, but especially I think it came out on this album, was the sort of sympathy and what they went through, what the two specific members of the band, Judd Hancock and Ryan Garner, had gone through medically. They're talking about a hospital, and while I've always kind of associated with the second Halloween movie being in the hospital and some other things, and it's just like suffering and stuff like that, I think maybe more so they were trying to sort of capture the what they went through and to try to make art out of suffering, which worked. Being in a hospital and weren't wondering whether this is the end of your life, and what people are doing, just observational, the little like samples and clicks and everything. It totally was composed really well. I don't know if they're actually samples or if they're actually like percussive instruments. I think actually they embraced the percussion. This is the first record they really embraced that sort of external auxiliary or supplemental percussion, which they have not really abandoned since. A lot of their music since has really featured that. But Midnight Gin's always been a favorite. The build in that is just so great. That's the song they talk about the hospital a lot. And Power Outage before that, it's like the hospital had a power outage, or the town had a power outage. You know, Yellow Bird is catchy, and it actually gets kind of, not heavy, but very busy toward the end. Orcus is atmospheric. Snowball Fight Attacks Formation is a fun, almost, you know, childlike. I almost think of like, you know, the movie or the story, Where the Wild Things Are. It's very childlike. There's a really great innocence to this that I'm totally charmed by. You know, this record is just, it's held up in, you know, I mean, for progressive rock fans or post-rock fans that like that was my whole approach to post-rock, and even math rock, which they feature a lot of too. Not as much on this as some of the other records, but I've always wanted it with other things. I'm not really much of a fan of the explosions in the sky. I don't like the whole sort of one-note kind of, you know, meandering post-rock. I know it builds and it's crescendos. Now, Godspeed Black Emperor, it's a different case, where I feel like the build-ups and the crescendos all lead to something great and climatic. I find that post-rock bands, when it has other instrumentation, when it has vocals, piano, other things that are not just guitar, drum, and bass and drums, totally can work if the compositions work. And it's very cinematic. I mean, you know, I've said way too much about this record because people don't, you know, I mean, people will check it out and they'll be like, it's okay. You know, it's like a lot of records I love that I just feel like, you know, it speaks to me, and it still speaks to me. I mean, I guess revisiting it today, I can say that it's not... A couple of the tracks, Iceberg and The Minus Zone is its own place, the last two tracks, I think it is. They are kind of long, and I would chop off a few minutes, and it would be even higher. Like, if I'm even comparing to the other 5-star records. But, you know, who am I? But then again, I'm a fanboy, so... But anyway, that's my sort of review or revisiting or retrospective on Face Yourself and Remove Your Sandals from Small Leaking Ships. I think this is also the first record they released after they moved to Portland, but from 2015. So I got a few more left, and then of course I get to review the new one by Friday when it comes out, Low Tide. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and we'll see you next time.